We'll be using the following input array to illustrate the solution for this problem. We have the inputs 0, 1, 0, 3. As you can see, the non-zero elements have been moved to the left, while the zero elements have been moved to the right. We have a couple of variables that we'll be using as we iterate through the array. The question specifies that the solution should be in place, which means we will not create a new array. That also means the space complexity will be constant, that is O of 1. For this solution, we will be using the two-pointer approach. Basically, we have one pointer for iterating through the array, that would be j, and we have another pointer that basically works on the non-zero elements of the array, and that will be last index variable. So to get started, we have our inputs array, which is in the first step 0, 1, 0, 3. We check if the array at j is not equal to 0. But first, what is the array at j? J is 0, which means the array at j is going to be whatever value is at the 0th index, which is 0 in this case. Last index is 0 as well, so the value of the array at last index is going to be 0. So we check if the array at j is not equal to 0. In this case, it is 0, so we skip the operation and increment j by 1. So we have our next step, which we have as 0, 1, 0, and 3. Now j is at 1, which means array at j is going to be 1. We check if the array at j is not equal to 0. In this case, that is true. So we assign to it the value of the array at last index. Last index is 0, array at last index is 0, but we are now assigning it array at j, which is 1. So we have 1, 1, 0, 3. And we increment the last index by 1, and we increment our j by 1. Now in the next iteration, we have 1, 1, 0, 3. J is at 2. The array at j is 0. We check if the array at j is not equal to 0. That condition is not true. So we skip it and we increment j by 1. So we have 3. Now we are at the fourth step. We have 1, 1, 0, 3. Now j is 3, so we are here. The array at j is now 3. We check if the array at j is not equal to 0. In this case, it is 3, so it is not equal to 0. So we assign the value of array at last index to be the value of array at j. Array at last index is 1, and last index is at index 1. So we have 1, 3, 0, 3. Now we increment last index by 1, so it is now 2. We increment j by 1, so it is now 4. And array at last index is now going to be 0, 1, 2. It is not going to be 0. So we'll go to the next iteration. But here we see that j is now 4, which means j is now does not satisfy the condition we're checking, which is that j has to be less than the length of the array. So we skip or we exit the for loop. So this is the result that we have so far. But if you notice, it is not the same as the expected output because we have 3 at the end. So how do we resolve this? We basically have a second for loop that starts iterating from the last index and fills the rest of the elements with zeros. So we have j, which starts at last index, which is 2. So we have the array at j, which is in this case going to be 1 3 0 3, which is going to start here, and the value at array j is going to be 0. Now it is already 0, so there is basically nothing else to do. So we increment j by 1, which is now 3. We check what is the value of array at j. That is 3. So we have 1 3 0 3. We're here. The value is 3. So we basically replace that with 0. So we cancel this, replace it with 0. So now we have 1 3 0 0, and we increment j by 1 again. Now in this case, j is beyond the length of the array, so we exit the second for loop. We start by creating a function called move zeros. Which accepts an array, and we declare a variable len, which is assigned the length of the array. And we have another variable called last index, which has a value 0. We have our for loop, which I trace through the array. So we have a variable j, which starts at 0, and we have j being less than len, and continually increment j by 1. We check if the value of the array at j is not equal to 0. If it is not, we assign the array at last index to be array at j, and we increment last index by 1. And we have our second for loop, which starts at j being equal to last index and has the condition j less than len, and we continually increment j by 1. Here we basically assign the array at j to be equal to 0. So to test this out, I'll basically copy the code, and I have the LeetCode question open in a new tab. I would paste it here and try to run it. So this passes, and when we submit it, it gets accepted. If you found this helpful, do give it a thumbs up, subscribe and share, and watch out for more videos. Thank you.